Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We've got a very exciting session to go on here. We've got, I would argue one of the most successful, probably the most successful music group that's come out of Australia. We've got Greg Page here, who is the original Yellow Wiggle, and he's got an amazing, absolutely amazing health story to tell us. So I'm hoping that this goes far and wide and touches lots of people. And most importantly, I'm sure Greg would agree with me on this, that even if just one person takes some ownership of their health and the health of those around them, then this interview will be deemed to be worthwhile. So welcome, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Richard. Good to be with you.
So those people who may not know, do you want to just quickly give us a bit of background about how the Wiggles came about?
Yeah, so the Wiggles began in 1991. So Anthony, Murray and myself were studying early childhood teaching at Macquarie University, but we were also musicians. Anthony and his friend Jeff had been in a group called the Cockroaches. So when Anthony, Murray and myself got together, we roped in Jeff to be part of the Wiggles as well. And it was really just about trying to create music and entertainment for children that was child appropriate, or as we would call it, developmentally appropriate, which means it's entertainment and music that is designed to engage with children on their level. And so that was back in 91. And, I guess to a certain extent, for the sake of keeping things short, the rest, as they say, is history. That's where it all began. And the Wiggles are still going today, 32 years on, and the Wiggles are as strong as ever, I think. And it's been an incredible journey for the guys, and certainly for myself to be a part of the original group. I left in 2006, which is a long time ago now, but I was there for about 16 years, and it was an incredible part of my life to be a part of so many young people's lives. And even today, to have 20 or 30-year-old people come up and say, you were my childhood, is extremely flattering. So I'm very blessed.
And what do you think made it work? Because obviously you guys had a special sauce, because nobody has matched what you did.
Yeah, look, I think, it was quite unique at the time for what we did. There were no other groups of entertainers for children. Really, I think there were three key things. The fact that we were early childhood trained and we were dealing with children on their level. Number two, the fact that we were mates and we had a chemistry that was organic. And number three, the fact that we were not motivated by commercial success. We did it because we loved it. And we never set out to make it a business. It became a business because it was something that we were totally invested in, just because of the pure joy that we got from doing it. But we could see the kids as well were having such a great time. So those three things, I think, are key for anyone. If you're in business, you do it because you love it. You don't do it because you're trying to be successful. I think the success that you get from business should be in the pleasure that you get from doing what you do, not from trying to achieve goals. And it's great, you've got to have goals. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have goals, but what I'm saying is that your primary goal should be to love what you do. Because if you don't love what you do, you're going to be unhappy. And happiness is probably the biggest thing that we can strive for in life, to be happy in what we do.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think that was the most contagious element of the Wiggles performance, that you guys just emanated a joy in what you were doing.
Yeah.
And as we were saying just before we started recording the interview, that that sort of stuff's contagious, and obviously the kids caught your joy. Yeah. And then that fed your joy, and it becomes cyclic.
That's right. It vibrates, and the vibrations get stronger and stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just tell us, you had a bit of an incident, a medical incident, one performance. Do you want to just share with us what happened then, when it was, where it was, and what happened?
Yeah, so going back, it was 3.5 years ago. It was January 2020. The original Wiggles decided to get together and raise some money for the bushfires that had ravaged much of the east coast of Australia back in late 2019 and early 2020. And we were doing a concert to raise money for Wires and for the Red Cross. And at the end of that show, I mean, it felt like just any normal show for me. A wiggle show is hard work and you get out of breath and get hot and exhausted. But at that show, I suffered a massive heart attack, which caused a cardiac arrest. And the heart attack was so massive and severe that I had no warning. It just sort of happened. And then I dropped dead, basically. I collapsed at the side of the stage and needed to be resuscitated. So that, that was really a very, interesting moment in my life, because it's turned my life in a totally different way than I saw it going before, but in such a positive way now. So it was a very life-changing moment.
And so what, obviously you had a cardiac arrest, that means that your heart stopped. So basically you died.
That's interesting. So I didn't, I guess clinically I was dead because my heart wasn't beating.
Yeah.
But at that point, and this is part of the education that we need to give people, right? At that point, when somebody's heart stops beating with a cardiac arrest, there's a time window where they can be resuscitated. And that's the key thing for people to understand, that if somebody's heart stops, it doesn't mean that it has to stay stopped. We can get restarted. And I think, luckily for me, there were people around me that knew that, and they knew what to do to try and get it restarted. And that's, literally why I'm here today, because of people's intervention and people who took ownership of somebody else's health and took on that chance that they could be responsible for saving a life. And they did. So it's quite incredible to think about the fact that there were 4 people in particular who were very hands-on in my resuscitation. And had it not been for the fact that they were confident to step up and do something, I probably wouldn't be here today. And that's what we need to instill in more people around the country, that confidence to be able to respond. And, we know that not everybody can be resuscitated. But what we also know is that when people do get involved and try to resuscitate a patient before paramedics arrive, the increase in survival rates are marked. It's a drastic increase in survival. So we need more people to be educated about what we're talking about now.
And so what was done to you to get your heart going again?
Yeah, so look, the very first thing that people did was they called 000. That's the first step in the process. You call, then you push. So if you find somebody who's not responding, that is, if you can't wake somebody up, you see someone collapse or you come across somebody that has collapsed, if you can't wake that person up, you call 000 straight away. Call. If that person is not breathing normally, so if you don't detect any breathing, or if the person sounds like they're gagging, choking, or gurgling, gasping, or even snoring sounds, they're not normal breathing sounds. So if that person's not breathing normally, then you start CPR. You push on their chest. So you call, push. And the third thing that people did for me, which we need more people to do in the community, is to shock the patient using an AED or defibrillator. Call, push, shock. 3 very simple things that anybody can do without any training whatsoever. You don't need to be trained to do CPR. Of course, training will give you more confidence to be able to do it and probably get a better result, but you don't need to be trained in CPR to have a go at saving somebody's life. Luckily for me, my responders had been trained and they did good quality CPR, but it should never be a barrier for somebody who comes across someone who's not breathing, that they should never think, I'm not trained, I shouldn't do CPR, right? Any attempt at resuscitation is better than no attempt at all. And the same goes for an AED. And again, for me, I had all those 3 links in what we call the chain of survival available to my responders. They were able to call, they were able to do CPR, they were able to push, and they were able to shock because the venue I was performing at had rapid access to an AED at that venue. And that's what we've got to change in Australia. We've got to enable or empower more people to be able to call, push, shock when needed. And sadly, it's that last link in the chain, that shock, that is absent for most people when they collapse. Because like sitting here now, so you'll see I'm in my car, right? I'm out and about now. I've got 6 AEDs in the car with me. But if I didn't have those here, where would my nearest AED be? right, there's a lady about to walk past me on the street. Now, if she collapsed, where would I find an AED, or where would I direct somebody to go and get one nearby? They're just not present enough in every situation, right? So wherever people live, wherever people work, and wherever people play, that's where we need to have AEDs, because sudden cardiac arrest can occur anywhere, anytime, and can affect anyone. So we just need to have more access to AEDs and more people who are prepared to be, like I call them, my angels who came in and saved my life that night. So we need more angels out there.
Okay, so just take us through the process. When did you realise that? When did you become aware of what had happened to you? Like, did you wake up in the emergency department or in intensive care? What happened?
Well, my first, so I apparently came to at the venue, but I don't remember anything at the venue. I vaguely remember being in the ambulance, but I still had no idea at that point in time what had happened. Then I remember being in the emergency department, and my wife was at my bedside, and my wife is a cardiac nurse.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I remember her being by my bedside and still not knowing what was going on. And I said to her, do you know what happened? And at that point in time, because I was in emergency, I hadn't been operated on, she said to me, "You're having a massive heart attack." And I was still so out of it. Those words resonated with me, but I didn't understand the gravity of them at the time. So I knew what she said, and I thought, geez, I'm having a massive heart attack. And then I kind of blacked out again, or was out of it. Then I woke up in the ward after I'd been operated on. So because it was a heart attack that had stopped my heart, they had to put a stent in to open up one of my arteries that had blocked off. So I woke up in the ward, and the nurse then was around the bed, and I think he was probably tucking in the sheets or something, and he looked up at me as I woke up, and he said, "Oh, gee, you're a very lucky man." He said, "Only 1 in 10 people survive what you've been through." And I thought, what are you talking about? He said, "And by the way, you're going to have very sore ribs from where they did CPR on you." And when he said that, I think that was the moment that I realized, geez, what on earth has happened here? That was the moment of realization. Then after that, there was a lot of learning about what actually took place, and the fact that my heart had stopped and I was like this close to not surviving, all those things. And it's been a massive journey since then. But that moment, I'll never forget my wife saying, "You're having a massive heart attack," and then being told you're 1 in 10 to survive, and you're going to have very sore ribs. And boy, they were sore, but I'm grateful that they were broken, because as a result of that good CPR, I'm here.
So has that experience altered your view of your health, or how you approach your health, feel about your health, manage your health? Any sort of, in your mentality, anything changed about your health?
Yeah, so things have changed. And I guess prior to my cardiac arrest, my cardiac nurse wife would often say to me, "Don't have so much butter on your bread. Don't eat the sausages. Don't have the chicken skin." She was conscious of my diet, because I kind of fluctuate with my weight, and I still am at the moment. And I do need to get back and focus on it, because I've always been very physically fit and active. So prior to my cardiac arrest, I was playing competition cricket, competition tennis. I was working out at the gym. I was walking every day, and I'd do a 7.5K walk in about 63 to 64 minutes. So it's a pretty brisk pace. And I could do all those things without any of the typical symptoms or warning signs that they tell you to look out for if you're concerned about your heart health. So I thought I was pretty fit and healthy. I did not think I was a candidate for a heart attack, let alone somebody who was going to drop dead and need to be resuscitated. So after I survived the cardiac arrest, of course, I changed things. I don't eat as many sausages now. I still have them every now and then, but nowhere near as often as I used to. Cheese is another thing I've cut out of my diet, or tried to cut out. I certainly don't have as much as I used to. I think it's that, partly previously it was that mentality of I'm invincible. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm invincible. I felt like I could do anything without any problem. Now, I guess the mindset is, well, I still feel invincible, but I know I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I know that at a moment's notice, and literally a moment's notice, your life can change. And this is the thing with sudden cardiac arrest. People do collapse at a moment's notice, and their life could be over, and their family will never see them again. Luckily for me, because I had those angels around me who were able to call, push, shock, I went home to my family. 90% of people don't get that luxury of seeing their loved one again. And that's really the biggest thing that I've learned. Even though Vanessa is a cardiac nurse, I never understood that some of those people that she operates on by helping doctors put stents in their heart, I never understood that some of them drop dead and need to be resuscitated. I thought they were people that had chest pain, all the classic heart attack signs, because I didn't know the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. So it's been a massive learning curve for me, even though I've had the resources right by my side for the past 15 years. Vanessa's been there, and I never understood the issue. So it's one of those things that until you have that light bulb moment of knowing why you need to understand something, you don't bother to investigate the detail of it. And I think that this is the big thing, right? We all have to find our why in our journey, because the why will make the how become obvious. And that is the beauty of life. We all have a very individual journey in life, whether it's mental health, physical health, relationships, work, life, balance, all of those things. We're here to be challenged, and we need to find our why that makes us tick, and the thing that is going to spur us on to become a better version of ourselves. And once you find the why, the how just becomes second nature, because I believe we all have incredible powers. We're all born with incredible creativity, whether we know it or not. We have the ability to create a future for ourselves. And that why, when you switch on that why, and that's that light bulb moment, the how is there because we have the capability to direct our future down many, many paths that are in front of us. And we can head down that path, whatever we choose, and we can change the paths at any time we want, because we are in control of our lives and our destiny to a certain extent. And we can head down that path, and we can take that path until such time as we think, this isn't working. My why still is the same, but I just need to find another how. So I just got very deep and meaningful there, but I think the core message is the why is what we all need to find, and the how will be the path in front of us.
And so do you reckon you, after your experience, like when you probably more so when you woke up after your surgery, did you go looking for your why? Like, why do I need to look after myself from this moment moving forward? What were the sort of, the internal conversations that you were having with yourself in regard to your health?
I think the why became very obvious. It became the fact that I survived something that I never thought would be relevant to me, and the fact that life can change. It can turn on a dime. You can't control everything in your life, but there are certain things you can control. And so if I can control the things that I'm eating or ingesting that might affect my ability to continue on living, then I'll do that. I'll make those changes. I can go without pizza. I can go without the sausages. I can go without the chicken skin. I can go without those things if it means that I can keep going on to be there for my family and to be there and do the work that I'm doing now. And I think that's probably a big thing for me coming out of what I've been through, to be able to, I now get to spend what I call bonus years with my family. I've had 3.5 bonus years with my kids, with my wife, with my parents, my sister and her family. And I've now got 2 beautiful granddaughters who I got to meet because I survived. So that is my why. But I want that why to exist for more people. I want more people to be surviving cardiac arrest, and I want them to go home to other family members and loved ones and continue to have the benefit of those bonus years that I've had. And so that's really the thing that has spurred me on. And so now, I don't know, I guess it's not like I feel a responsibility. I just feel that it's just something that I want to do because I'm in a position where I can use whatever public profile or public goodwill that I have to try and bring my message to a wider audience and try to educate more people about how they can be those angels for somebody else if they collapse in front of you. Now, we're not going to be able to change the health journey for people before they drop dead necessarily, because it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. You know, you could be the fittest person in the world. It doesn't stop you having a cardiac arrest. Like I heard this morning, unfortunately, Bronny James, the son of LeBron James in the US, he had a cardiac arrest. He's a young guy, and that cardiac arrest would not be because of heart disease or, poor health. It's just something that happens. And these are the cardiac arrests that we need people to be aware of. We're not talking about fat, overweight, old guys. We're talking about people. It doesn't matter who you are, age, sex, level of fitness. Cardiac arrest does not discriminate. And when it occurs, we need people to be able to respond. So the health journey that I'm on now, sure, it's one that I need to take ownership of for my own health moving forward, but I guess I'm putting myself out there to try and help other people understand what role they can play in saving a life in somebody else's health journey too.
And it's very obvious to me, just listening to the way you're talking, with the amount of passion that you have for your cause and what you're investing your time and resources and effort into, that I find it really fascinating that I have a belief that we're not defined by what happens to us, but we're more defined by what we do with what happens to us. And I think you're an absolutely fantastic example of something that, was tragic, but could have been more tragic. But you've actually harnessed that and said, I want to do something with this. And you call them your bonus years. And you don't want to waste those. But, there's a difference between any resource, whether it's money, time, or whatever. There's a difference between investing and wasting. And you clearly have chosen to invest in this cause. So what's your end game with what you're doing now with Heart of the Nation? What's your end game?
My end game is to not be doing it, right? My end game is that, that we raise the awareness level to such a point that people get it, that we don't have to be lobbying government to introduce CPR education into schools, that we don't have to be out there advocating so hard for people to buy AEDs and make them available to the community to use, that we have governments that legislate about AEDs, that you should have to have them, and that we basically, I want to put my charity, Heart of the Nation, out of business. Right? I want to work so hard that it's not needed anymore because people get it, that we don't have to be educating anymore because governments are doing it, because sporting clubs are educating, schools are educating, workplaces are educating, and just making this the national health issue that it is. 28,000 Australians every year will suffer a sudden cardiac arrest. 28,000. Only 10% will survive that. So if you imagine, I don't know if you're a cricket fan, but do you know do you know the old Wacker ground in Perth? I think it holds about 22,000 people or 20,000, something like that. Imagine packing that Wacker ground full of spectators at the end of the game saying, sorry, only 10% of you get to go home to your families. 2,000 people would walk out of that stadium. That's what's happening every year in Australia, right? 28,000 people are going into a sports ground, let's say, having a cardiac arrest, and only 10% of them get to go home. And it's a massive number. It is a critical national health issue that's flown under the radar for a long time. And the difference is we don't need to do research on how to save lives when somebody has a cardiac arrest. We can do all the research and education of trying to prevent that from happening, but it's not working, right? That education has been going on for years and years and years and years. So in my case, I had no risk factors So if I'd have seen my GP the morning of my cardiac arrest, he would have looked at me and said, look, you're a pretty fit 48-year-old guy. Go on your way, no problem. Yet I would have dropped dead that night at that show, right? We can't prevent this from happening. But what we can do is we can save more lives, because we know that the call, push, shock intervention, the chain of survival, saves lives. So it confounds me incredibly when politicians will say, oh, well, we're already investing in heart health education and prevention, all that stuff. I know you are. But what we need to do is invest in the other end of the spectrum as well, because we're not spending money on research there. We know the intervention that works and saves lives. And we've seen it in other countries. In Denmark, when they introduced CPR education into schools, it doubled the survival rate within 5 years. Wow. Right? Yes. This is the confounding thing. And we know that the presence of an AED in the chain of survival. So when you have all three links in the chain, call, push, shock, having that third link can result in survival rates as high as 67%, right? 67%. We're not talking about 10% anymore. So we're talking about this phenomenally drastic increase in survival rates. And that's why I get so passionate about it, because the education piece is missing, not just for the community, but for government as well, and politicians who don't understand that. Sure, we don't want people to drop dead. We know that, right? We want to prevent that from happening, but we're not doing that at the moment. So in the meantime, let's put this other intervention into place. Let's invest in CPR education. Let's invest in more AEDs in the community so that more people can have access to an AED when they need it, because doing CPR alone, you know, that will double the chance of survival. But when you introduce that AED, you can at least triple the chance of, or the rate of survival for more people. So I think it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer.
And so what I was really shocked at the footy club where I'm involved, talking to one of our strength and conditioning coach. And he works at a private gym, and he was telling me that they don't have an AED at the gym. Now, to me, that's almost should be a hanging offence. That's criminal. That they're in an environment where people are like doing cardio classes.
Yep. They've
got to be vulnerable to cardiac arrest, and yet they don't take the responsibility of having an AED. Surely that's like, you know, responsibility 101 is to and I was actually staggered that it's not law that a gym would have to have an AED.
Yeah, look, you would think so, but you're right. The other place that staggers me too, and I get incredibly confounded by this, doctors' surgeries don't have to have them either. Now, if you've got chest pain, right, if you're feeling unwell, where do you go? You go to a doctor. Right?
Yeah.
If that chest pain turns into a heart attack, which can turn into a cardiac arrest, if you arrest at the doctor's surgery and they don't have an AED, you're no better off than you would have been at home, right? So our GPs are required to have a whole lot of other resus equipment in their premises, but they're not required to have an AED. All they need to do is a self-assessment. And if they've got a shop nearby that might have an AED at it, or if they're within, you know, a certain distance of a hospital or an ambulance station, they don't have to have an AED. And it's just silly because, you know, we know that ambulances are not very often at their stations. They're often out doing jobs. They might be at a hospital, but they'll be ramped on the hospital waiting to unload patients. It doesn't work as simply as what people think it does. But what we do know is simple, is that getting an AED on a patient within 3 to 5 minutes can increase survival rates 67, 72%, something like that. And that is simple, it's effective, and we know it works.
Yeah, it's really interesting just to I guess wrap up our conversation, that just as you're talking, I'm thinking the kind of mantra of Basics for Blokes is to get blokes to take ownership of their health. But I think what you're talking about is a similar philosophy, but on a broader scale, that as a community, we need to take ownership of each other's health.
Yep.
You know, we need to be looking after each other not just ourselves. And the likes of a gym owner, surely that gym owner has to take some ownership of his responsibility of his members and visitors to his gym. And, ownership 101 surely has to be the capacity to deal with a critical event if it happens. So having said that, you said you've got some AEDs in the car there. So if anybody's hopefully there might be a gym owner watching this interview and says, you know what, I need to take ownership of that. What's his best response to getting an AED for his premises, or any doctors watching that, need to do that, or even somebody that's got, a shop, or, is the president of a sporting club or anything like that? Because obviously learning the CPR is one thing, that's a bit of a longer game. But if anybody's watching this that has people around them that they want to be responsible for, get an AED. What do they need to do that?
Get in touch with Heart of the Nation. We do sell them through our website. We're a charity, so any money that we make goes back into what we do, supporting our work, and register it with us as well. So if you've got an AED already, you can register it on our network and let people know that it's there. So we have an app people can download to find the nearest AED in their area. So you're right. It is about ownership of your own health. So number one, do what you can to stay healthy, right? We can't control everything, but what we can control are the things that we know about, and control those risk factors that have been proven to lead towards, cardiac events. So try and stay healthy, do what you can to prevent it from happening. But number two, be that person that says, I can play a part here. If something happens on my premises or nearby my premises or in my home or nearby my home, I'm going to learn CPR, all right? You don't have to get qualified. There's many videos on the internet that show you how to do CPR. You don't get a certificate, but at least you understand what to do. So learn CPR, buy an AED, or at very least know where your nearest AEDs are, and educate others, right? It is about community health here. This is about anyone. It could be a child, it could be an adult, it could be a male, it could be a female. Anybody, anywhere, anytime can suffer a sudden cardiac arrest. And that word sudden is so important because it can catch you off guard. And if you're not prepared, the difference between life and death is just minutes. And being prepared means that you can cut down that window of time and respond appropriately and quickly and give that person the best chance of surviving, like I had, and got to go home to my family. And 3.5 bonus years so far. And I'll tell you what, they've been incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I really appreciate your time, Greg. It's been fantastic chatting to you. And I love engagement with stories where people use what happened to them for social benefit and, for the benefit of the community. And I want to thank you on behalf of the community for the decisions that you've made to turn your potentially tragic experience into something that has massive community benefit. And I'd love to see an absolute rush of inquiries to your website after people watching this to say, you know what, we need to get a defibrillator at our gym or at our shop or even at home, and let the neighbours know that we have a defibrillator. Do a letterbox drop and let everybody in the street know that we have a defibrillator at our place if anything untoward ever happens. And I mean, that would be my hope and desire, is that some good comes out of this. So all power to you, Greg. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And and thanks for sharing your journey. And it's great. One of the objectives of these interviews is to encourage blokes to have conversations about their health, because we don't do that very well. And I thank you for being part of the journey of what we're trying to do, is to get guys to talk about their health more. So thank you for being willing to do that and invest some of your precious time in the pursuits of basics for blokes.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on that.
That's been great. Thanks very much, Greg. Well, all the best with your venture.
Thank you, Richard. You too.
Okay. See you later.